Hi, everyone. My name is Gareth Taylor. I'm a cinematographer and occasionally direct as well. I've spent the last 15 plus years doing everything from films to documentaries, music videos, commercials, corporate work, branded content, live events. I've dabbled in many different parts of the industry, even reality, which I'm not proud to say, but you have to try to know what works and what doesn't work. And like all of us, we have to just be versatile and be willing to take on many different jobs just to keep going, just to make a living. It's a tough industry. It's incredibly competitive, and it does not get any easier. Technology adds on a whole other layer, which is can be very helpful, can also be difficult to deal with because it forces you to focus on things that are not necessarily creative, even though those are tools to help you with your creativity. Today, I'm going to focus on the importance of networking for cinematographers. It's obviously important for anybody working in the industry or any other industry for that matter. But today we'll just focus on cinematographers and the importance of networking. And there are many different ways to network. And so to prevent you from having to stare at me this whole time and listening to me ramble, I brought on a friend of mine, a good friend who is also a wonderful and incredibly talented cinematographer. Her name's Alicia Robbins, and as of late, she's been working on TV, a lot of TV shows, including Bridgerton and Quantum Leap. All right, here we are. Alicia, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful. It's great to see you, talk to you, because we don't get to see each other enough. And yeah, why don't you start with introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Alicia Robbins. I'm a cinematographer. I've been in Los Angeles for well over 20 years now and have been a cinematographer for over 20 years now. And yep, still going at it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Perseverance. That's the first term I heard when I came to Hollywood, and I'll always remember it. Because I forget if it was Jim Carrey who said something
Yeah,
about like perseverance. It's all about that. So I just try to
it's
stick with that.
true.
But today we're talking about the importance of networking for us cinematographers. We can agree it's important for anybody in any industry to
Mhm.
to network, but we'll focus on us because it's our time.
Mhm.
And so I'll just ask you in a very, because it's a layered subject, obviously,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of different answers, and we'll talk about different types of networking. But I think if you could start by maybe telling us, you know, briefly why to you networking is so important.
Mhm. Um, First of all, I hate calling it networking.
All right.
I feel like already when you think about networking, and I learned this early on in my career. If I thought of something as a networking event or that I was going to go network, I immediately felt intimidated by it and would get nervous about it because if nothing came of it, or if I didn't meet someone that I thought could be helpful, it made it like, was that worth going to that event? Blah blah blah. So I just like saying I'm going to go meet some new friends and have some good conversations because honestly, that's what you're looking to do anyway, is meet some new friends and have some good conversations. And whether or not anything comes out of it, at least you had a good time. At least you met some people. At least you had some good conversations. So I usually try not to call it networking anyway.
That's brilliant.
But one of the things that, and I've always been pretty good about this throughout my career from early on, is this notion of getting out there and meeting people and talking to people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the people that you think are the ones that are going to help you with your career. Like as a cinematographer, you're thinking, oh, I need to be meeting producers, I need to be meeting directors, and then probably other DPs as well, because a lot of your jobs can come from other cinematographers. As you get going in your career, you'll see that a lot of DPs, if they can't do a job, for instance, they'll refer another cinematographer, or if they need an additional cinematographer on their show or a second unit DP, then they'll have people on their roster that they can call. So, but I've met people at events that aren't necessarily like a director or a producer or another DP, and it might be an actor, it might be a writer, or even a grip, or someone that you wouldn't expect to make a connection with, and that sometimes might lead to a really great friendship or possibly a job. So the importance of just getting out there and talking to people, you really won't know how it comes to play over the course of your career until you really start connecting the dots over years and years and years of doing this. And you're like, oh, how did I meet that person? Oh, that was from this person that I met 10 years ago. So it's just a matter of giving it time and building that spider web of connections.
Yeah, my gosh, it is wild because, as you say these things, I'm like, boom, 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 all these little lights come up, and it reminding me of occurrences where, I mean, a simple example, it took me, and I love the fact that you're calling it meeting rather than networking, because it's true, networking just right off the bat, it puts pressure on any activity that you're getting out of your house for. And as we know, it's hard to get out of the house sometimes, for a variety of reasons. In our case, we're oftentimes working. We're doing something. We're prepping. We're looking for work. We're sending emails, doing research, learning, reading, or even watching movies. And so to get out of the house, force ourselves out of the house, get in our car. In our case, we have to drive through Los Angeles, which is not always fun. And most events happen right at rush hour.
Yeah.
And so it's not a pleasant proposition to have to do that, to go somewhere where you're not sure you're going to know people, you're not sure you're going to meet anybody, you're not sure you're going to really learn anything or get anything out of it. And I think for me, I was so guilty of that, of always asking myself those questions. Is it worth my time? Now I don't even ask myself anything. I see something, I'll put it on the calendar, and it becomes part of the, it's scheduled, and it's part of the routine. You just go, and it's I think it's something that you practice, and because it's, more than just, we won't call it networking, but it's talking to people. It is socializing, more than anything. And for many years, I think, when you start your career, I don't know how it was for you, but when I started, the first few years, I kind of, you want to prove yourself, and you feel like, well, I don't want to rely on anybody, so I'm gonna do it my way. I don't want to like ask for favors. I don't want to ask for help. I don't want to go out of my little comfort zone to talk to other people, because I just want to prove it to myself and others that I can do it. And I realized, unfortunately, I wasn't in a position where I came up with, say, a mentor figure who would have been like, you're stupid, don't think that way. That's not the way to think about it. It's the opposite. Get out there, make friends, meet people. It doesn't matter who it is, because you never know what you're going to get from meeting somebody. Which, of course, I knew that because, I mean, from the first feature film I worked on, which I was gaffing, that was the first year I was in the business. From that job, I can trace so many. It's like a giant, family tree where I can trace so many jobs until today, back to that summer job, which is an awful, awful experience, back in the summer of 2006. And so I know the importance, how that can happen, but of course, you do have to get out of your comfort zone, and you have to go without any expectations. And another thing you mentioned that is very important, and I learned about a little too late in the game as well, is that networking with your peers, as in our, the DPs, the other cinematographers out there, is
Mm.
so important. I was always shy and afraid, and I think probably, of course, it's intimidating meeting other DPs, because you always feel like, oh, but it's my competition. I don't like I don't need to talk to them. They're either going to make me feel like crap, or they're gonna, because they're probably working more than I am, and you think all those silly things. And of course, in hindsight, it's the complete opposite. And since I've, several years ago, since I got out of my little head and went to events and met other DPs, my gosh, my horizon has just widened, and that's how we met, because one event led to another, to another, that
Yeah.
eventually led to us meeting at the AC Awards this year. And
Yeah.
here we are, and
Yeah. And then we've seen each other at a few other networking events,
exactly. And then,
gatherings.
yeah, and
So
we get to socialize, and
yeah.
it's fabulous. So yeah, I can't stress how important it is to get out
Well,
there.
and it's also too where earlier in my career, as you start going to these events and these gatherings, and you do find some people that are willing to talk to you more and more, so they do become a little bit like a mentor that's giving you advice. You can, after so many years, you start seeing that role shifting as well. It starts reversing, where now I have people reaching out to me wanting to have a coffee meeting with me to talk to me about their career. And it's like, oh my gosh, when did that switch? How did that happen? Even though I still seek out people that I consider way above me, and I'm like, hey, can I talk to you? Can I meet with you? Can I take you out for dinner? But it is really interesting to see when that starts shifting. And then so advice to a lot of upcoming cinematographers, the ones that are reaching out to me and wanting to have coffee with me, wanting to have just to socialize, I remember them. And so when something pops up on a show where I do have an additional camera day where I can hire someone to come out, if I just had coffee with that person, I'm remembering them. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's call up so and so and bring them out, because they left a really good impression on me and they have a nice reel. So the more that you are networking with other people, the more those people are going to remember you when they have those opportunities to hire you. And I know that was the case for me when I was coming up through my career and networking with other cinematographers. They did remember me and called me to come out and work with them. So that, again, that's that whole like web of connections that you're building where they can call on you and bring you out. And then, like you said, you did that job in 2006 and you know so many things that came out of it. I'm sure it's also because you did a freaking good job on on that gig that you did.
It
So
was not
that's the key.
hard.
Well, but that is the key, right? You have to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
network, get the gig, but then you need to like, there's a fly in here. What?
You need to show up and do
My
the
point.
job. Yeah.
He's networking. You got to do a good job. You got to put in
Mhm.
110%. You got to make them remember you. So that's part of it. It's not just the networking. Then when you get out there, you gotta kick it.
No, absolutely. When the opportunity arises, you have to show up, and
Mhm.
that's another quote, the Tom Hanks quote. You just show up. Number one
Yeah.
thing, just show up.
And on time.
Yeah, and on time. That's right. That's what he said. Yeah, show up on time. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you
Put your
for
phone away. Once you're on
seriously.
set, you stop networking. So you network, or you're communicating with people around you, but phone away. You're not thinking about that other job. That is a huge pet peeve of mine. And I've literally not hired people again before because they were on their phone too much. So
Yes, that's definitely something that I have many pet peeves, such as that one, and
yeah,
yeah, that could be a whole other
that's a
conversation,
whole other Zoom call.
which maybe in the future maybe I'll bring you back and we can converse about that, and on
Yeah.
set etiquette, and why we
Mhm.
hire certain people, why we don't. And I think that would be a
Mhm.
very good subject, actually.
Yeah.
So, but let's not steer away
No, 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 no.
and
We can
stick with,
continue with the art of
yeah,
gathering. Oh,
yes.
that's a book. I don't know if you can actually quote that.
I mean, we can do whatever we want. We're talking to our peer filmmakers here and people who, hopefully we'll get something out of this conversation regarding the importance of socializing in the networking of filmmakers. Anyway, all right, let's get back to well, one thing you mentioned, I wanted to get back to. Oh, you mentioned meeting people who you consider, higher and more established, more experienced. And I think something that's extremely important. And you said, like, when you have people coming to you afterwards, you're like, of course I remember you. I'm going to talk to you. And I find that it's a lot of the time the same thing with, meeting people who are, whether you call them idols or people you just admire because they've had a great career, they've maybe shot films or TV shows that you really appreciated, and it takes a lot to even go and talk to them. So most of the time, I just don't bother unless someone introduces me, because I'm like, I don't want to be the fanboy and be like, hey, you don't want to do that. But what I'll say is that the more you go out and you go to those events, the more you come across those people, those really great established cinematographers, ASC members, union DPs who work all the time, and for the vast majority, they are just like us. And what strikes me the most is that I find a lot of them to be just as vulnerable as we are, in terms of, yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on. I hope I'm looking for work. I'm like, so many times I'm like, oh, so what are you doing? What do you got going on? And a lot of them, they're not working, and
Yeah.
they're looking for work, or they're in between, or they're prepping something, or they're having a meeting with a producer, and hopefully
Mhm.
it, the budget works, or it's all the same problems that
Mhm.
we have. So
Mhm.
it
Yeah, just
doesn't
at a
really.
different level.
Absolutely, exactly. But some of them are even looking for, because you'll have some who maybe they do a ton of commercial work, and they're successful in that field, but they want to do more narrative.
Mhm.
And because they're not known maybe to do a lot of narrative, it's hard for them. Once you're kind of in that little, you're typecast, it's hard to
Mhm.
break out of that mold. So I
Yeah.
find that sometimes they're willing to just take on, smaller, low budget independent films. So it definitely opens the conversations. And once you relax and you let your heartbeat kind of settle, you're like,
Mhm.
oh, you're just like me. We're
Just
just,
another person. Yeah.
and then you build that connection over time, and you
Yeah.
become friends once you hang out with people long
Yeah.
enough. And so it's great. And it's I think yeah, for me, one of the most important things is, don't yeah, don't be too intimidated
Mhm.
by established people. They're just like, we've all gone through the same steps. some
Yeah.
some some have taken the elevator,
Mhm.
and some others have taken the stairs. But more people have taken the stairs than the elevator. So odds are we're going to meet
More
someone.
people have rock climbed up the rock face.
Good Lord, and I've fallen so
Never.
many times. Yeah, the free solo business.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
just a
I
good.
think that's more of how it works.
That's a perfect metaphor. I think for a number of years at the beginning, I was free soloing, and I
Yeah.
fell so many times and try to go
At
back
least you
up.
didn't
And
die.
yeah, not yet, but
Oh
I've
my gosh.
since
Yeah,
then
and
I've
like
used
you're
the
saying
rope.
too, you'll see people over and over and over again at these events and they'll start remembering you. And also it's just that sheer practice of going to those kinds of things where you just start becoming more comfortable in those environments. And the more you do it, the easier it gets to strike up conversations with people that you don't know. But that just takes practice. So if you're only doing going to an event just once in a blue moon, then that social awkwardness is going to come out. And think about like how we are on set. It is all about socializing and being able to get along with new people all the time. Every set is a whole different group of people usually. So using these events and these networking gatherings is good practice for you, having to meet all new people on set all the time too. So it's building those social skills that are important for you as a cinematographer.
Absolutely. And also it's just learning from others, just
Mm-hmm.
sharing those war stories, and how to deal with producers, how to deal with directors, how, and then of course all the techie stuff, because a lot of the events we tend to go to are maybe open houses, for
Mm-hmm.
vendor open houses, or trade shows. And so it is around, it's around,
Mm-hmm.
we're around cameras, we're on lighting a lot. And
Yeah.
so we I was like, oh, have you used this,
Yeah.
how do you use that, why don't you like this? And it's wonderful, and it's kind of a shortcut to doing research, instead of staying at home and reading up on specs on new cameras and this and that. Go out and
Yeah.
talk to people who've used these tools and see how they use them, because you know you have manufacturers in the way they market their products, and
Mm-hmm.
then you have practical applications, and those are vastly different things. And
Yeah.
so you can read all the specs, and you'll see that sometimes when you talk to producers, and like, oh yeah, we want to use this camera, and I'm always like, okay, that's a good camera, but why? What is the main reason? And then
Yeah.
they'll typically blurt out a whole bunch of things,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, but in practical application, this might not be the best
Yeah.
tool. So that's another
A
subject,
whole other.
another conversation. I think
Yes.
I'm gonna veer us towards. So we've been talking about the kind of the classic networking, socializing in person, but I think there's also a conversation about the online sort of networking and socializing, which involves social media and possibly other other events, online events, or Zoom
Yeah.
events. So is that something that you do a lot of?
The online events, I haven't done a ton of them. Honestly, I'm just not as big of a fan of the online events. I like the in-person stuff. If I'm going to do any sort of networking with anyone, it's going to be more of like a one-on-one Zoom call. So I would rather do something like this and just have a conversation with somebody. I haven't done a lot of the online events, unfortunately, but I can speak a little bit on the social media aspect of it. And I do think that one thing that is really important, because obviously when you're engaging on Facebook, when you're engaging on Instagram, Twitter, wherever it is, that is part of a networking process. But you have to make sure that you're not always a negative person as well. Like, I think that's actually really important.
Oh yeah.
There's sometimes you'll see certain people where every single one of their posts is complaining about something. And yes, that they're engaging in the conversation, they're out there, they're networking, so to speak. However, when you're reading text like that, you're never hearing the tone of someone. You're never understanding what the backstory is of why they're explaining it to begin with, in those negative terms. And so it's just something to be wary of. Like, I'm not saying don't complain about something if it's really something you should be complaining about. I'm just saying be wary of doing that on every single one of your posts that you put out there.
No, I think that's
So
very important. Yeah,
I
we
know I've
we
complained online about stuff before, but it's not every single time.
yeah, no, it's important. I think whether online or in person,
Yeah.
I think as a general rule of humanity, it's usually better to try to limit the negativity, because it's human beings are very porous, and
Yeah.
it just tends to yield to more negativity, and
Mhm.
then that's counterproductive.
I
So
mean, you want to be realistic about things. It's not like you
mhm.
want to gloss over things that are happening in the industry or happening in the world and being like, oh, everything is hunky dory. That's not what I'm saying to do. It's just then figure out a solution to it. I guess if you're going to complain about something, figure out, okay, what can we do to make this better, and have that conversation rather than just like poo-pooing an idea or being negative about something all the time. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. No, it's yeah, no, it's important because, and like you said, it's important to not also just be like, oh, everything's great and all, because that's probably the main problem with social media, is that
Mm-hmm.
there's that layer of, well, I'm showing the best side of myself. Everyone is, for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's a danger that I find also, is hanging out on social media a little too much can be very
Mm-hmm.
negative, because you tend to see the best of everyone. So if you look at other filmmakers page and or profile, it might be all like, whoa,
Oh, they work all the time.
they're
Why am I not getting these jobs? It's
they're
like,
so busy, and I'm just this loser on my
yeah.
phone looking at their threads of people I don't even know.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
It,
Yeah.
it's
I think that's why
terrible.
I like the in-person stuff the best.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
because you do get a better sense of really what's going on with that person's career and how they're handling it. And of course, like right now with us dealing with the strike and everything, it's nice to be able to talk to people in person about the experience that you're going through. I mean, I think it's so funny that when we went to that event at Tiffin that you and I went to, and we're all in that round table, and we're supposed to just introduce ourselves and talk about what we work on. And before we knew it, everyone's talking about how they're dealing with the strike and how they're coping with it. And we're like, are we in a therapy group right
Absolutely.
now? Everyone loved it. It was so nice. Everyone just kind of opened up about how it's been hard for everyone. And it really did feel like it was a therapy session. That was like one of the best networking events I've been to.
Absolutely. No, and that's a perfect example. And around that table of what, 20, 25 people, we
Yeah.
probably had, 3 or 4 ASC members and
Mhm.
a lot of other notable professionals. And yeah, everyone's dealing with the same problems. We all have bills to pay. We all have worries and lives, and
Yeah.
or families, or this or that.
Mhm.
It's complicated, and it affects everyone. And um yeah, during the well, this is perfect segue into because of the time we are in, and the strikes unfortunately don't seem to be near the end. So it's very relevant for us to quickly just talk about, what do we do right now, during, with all this time that we have, how are
Mhm.
we networking? And
Mhm.
I mean, I guess it's not very different, or is it? Like, how do you perceive this time, this downtime?
Well, I
Do you
mean,
use
I'm
it
doing
for
a
more
lot
networking or
more.
not? So
I'm
you,
doing a lot more networking
okay.
because I'm able to go to more events. And even if they're at a weird time, it doesn't matter. I can get in my car at any point because I'm not working anyway. So I've been trying to go to a lot more events, and especially like camera demos or lens demos or anything like that that's out there, because like you're saying, you can learn a lot from these experiences and hearing other DPs talking about it and how they've used it. So I've been doing that a lot more since the strike has been going on. And there's always events out there. I mean, you can get on Eventbrite and just look up keywords like movies, filmmaking, whatever. And there's going to be events out there that are going on with some really cool keynote speakers or equipment that they're showing. So I've been doing that a lot more since the strike. However, the conversations are a little bit different because you can't just go, oh, what are you working on? That usually is one of the conversations that you'll have with someone is, oh, what are you working on right now? So it was so fun. I was at an event just the other night and I was like, oh my gosh, hey, it's so good to see you. And we both just were silent. And he goes, normally I would say, what are you working on right now? And I'm like, I know, me too. What do we talk about? He's like, the weather? I'm like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, let's just say, what do you like to do?
Yeah, what do you like to do? What have you been doing? What have you been doing to occupy your time right now? And so a lot of the conversations have been just going into talking about how are they enjoying their time right now? What are they focusing on? Are they focusing on health, family, like, are you traveling? Are you doing any trips? And it's kind of cool because normally you're talking about what are you working on? How'd you get that job? How has it been working on that job? And it's always about like filmmaking. So it's kind of cool that these conversations haven't been all about filmmaking lately. It's been kind of a breath of fresh air, honestly.
It's true. I agree. It is nice. It's a nice little yeah. It's just oxygen to the mind, because it's true. Sometimes it's a little too much, because our careers are so involved,
Mhm.
and our lives are so involved with our careers. It's a kind of a nonstop thing, and
Yeah.
so it is nice to have.
Always thinking about cinematography. You're either working and doing cinematography, and then you're going to the events and you're still talking about cinematography. So it's like, maybe we can take something from this time and
I
realize that
agree.
once we all get back to work, we don't always have to talk about cinematography all the time. We can talk about lots of other things.
Absolutely. Yeah. We,
So
we
much
should we
stuff
should
going on.
we should set up like a monthly luncheon where all we talk about is maybe things we do on the side,
Yeah.
like you pick up your guitar,
Yeah.
I do a little gardening, and then we can
Uh-huh.
just talk about that stuff, like life
Yeah. We
stuff,
can
which
talk
is
about
so
drip
nice.
lines and the best
Yes.
gauge tubing. I mean, whatever.
Why not? Or staining furniture. I mean,
Staining furniture.
sky's the
Exactly.
limit. Sky's the limit.
Talk about
And
anything.
I think this is a perfect place to leave this conversation. Obviously, there's so much more we could talk about, but maybe we'll do it some other time, or we'll just pick another subject. If you're willing
Yeah,
to come back and talk, it'd be awesome to have you. And
totally. That'd be
it's
cool.
been a blast. Thank you very much for your time, and it's always good to see you. And we'll keep chatting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, bye, Alicia.
Bye.